big of a problem is mass immigration in Canada? The majority of Canadians seem to think that it's a serious issue, and for good reason. Another public opinion poll was released this week showing that a majority in this country think 500,000 immigrants a year is too high and it will negatively impact affordability. Obviously. In response to this public outcry and rebuke of one of their core liberal policies, that being mass immigration, the new immigration minister, Mark Miller, recommitted Canada in a recent interview to maintaining their exorbitantly high level of 500,000 immigrants per year. And if Canadians are so lucky, Mark Miller might even raise that target number even higher because, 500,000 immigrants is just too low for the people in charge. Despite Canadians making it clear that they are done with mass immigration, that they are saying no mass to more people from the third world, and that everywhere you look in this country, the immigration policies have failed, the people in charge seem to be moving in the complete opposite direction. After all, the political class in Canada don't have to worry about the same issues all of us do. They don't have to worry about affording a home, or putting food on the table, or affording gas. What they care about more than anything else in the world is votes. And no matter what side of the House of Commons you sit on, or whether you wear a red tie or a blue tie, more people means more votes. And the rest of us just have to live with the consequences. In fact, things are so bad now that the province of Nova Scotia has now resorted to asking residents to renting out spare rooms in their homes to people who can't afford rent. And in Toronto, Olivia Chow is now asking Torontonians to open up spare rooms in their homes to put up asylum seekers. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: why are our leaders committing to mass immigration when Canadians are struggling like never before? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. Take a look at this Nanos poll released this week. 68% of respondents to the poll think immigration levels are too high and will negatively impact housing affordability and supply. In other news, water is wet. I say this because the findings are not only obvious. If you increase the number of people in a housing shortage, competition to find a house will also increase. But I say this also because it's just yet another opinion poll that follows the same trend we've been seeing for years. The same results were found last year when 75% of respondents said the same thing in a Ledger poll, that increasing immigration to this extremely high level will have drastic impacts on housing affordability and services. But despite the now routine series of public polling which continues to tell the same story, the federal government under Justin Trudeau and new immigration minister Mark Miller have recommitted to maintaining the 500,000 immigrants a year target. Speaking to Bloomberg journalists last week, this is what Mark Miller had to say about Canada's plan for immigration. The current record-busting level of immigration may suggest that newly minted immigration minister Mark Miller may, as he has already suggested to Bloomberg News, further increase Canada's immigration targets. I don't see a world in which we lower it. The need is too great. Whether we revise them upwards or not is something that I have to look at. But certainly I don't think we're in any position of wanting to lower them by any stretch of the imagination. We're not in any position to lower them. The need is too great, says Mark Miller. Despite the fact that Canadians want immigration levels lowered, the government is going full steam ahead. And when Miller says that the need is too great, is he referencing that labor shortage the media keeps telling us all about? Going by the legacy media headlines, that labor shortage really seems bad, despite the fact that nobody around us seems to be able to find a job these days. Seriously, if you know someone looking for a somewhat skilled job these days, they are guaranteed to tell you the exact same thing. That might be because this so-called labor shortage we keep hearing about isn't being reflected in Canada's unemployment numbers. The unemployment rate in Canada rose again last month, the third month in a row, despite the fact that Canada continues to bring in record numbers of people. And in this current housing crisis we're in, Canada lost 45,000 construction jobs. I thought immigration was supposed to solve this problem. Turns out, maybe it's having the opposite effect. A food bank in Scarborough, a suburb just outside of Toronto, reported last week that 92% of people that rely on the Scarborough food bank system are not born in Canada. And that 72% of the people relying on that food bank have been in Canada for a year or less. Meanwhile, Canada continues to bring in a seriously high number of international students to study at our colleges and universities who pay extremely high tuition fees and end up like this poor man living under a Toronto bridge while studying at Conestoga. And even worse, Canadian-born students studying at our universities and colleges have to resort to living in homeless shelters because they can't afford rent. To solve the housing shortage in Nova Scotia, the province is spending over $1 million to form a partnership with a company called HappyPad, where homeowners can connect with people looking for month-to-month low rental bedroom options. Not at all something that we should be having to resort to in this country so that Canadians can get a house. But these are the times we're living in. And in Canada's most populated city, Toronto, where refugees and asylum seekers continue to flood to, despite the fact that there is simply no place to put them, the socialist mayor Olivia Chow is now asking residents to house asylum seekers in their spare bedrooms for low-cost rental options. When asked by True North's Sue-Ann Levy if Olivia Chow or any other Toronto city councillors would take the lead in opening up one of their spare bedrooms to house these asylum seekers, no answer was given. Which is not surprising, given that, like I said in the intro, the housing crisis, the food crisis, all of these other problems, really created by the people in charge, aren't felt by the people in charge. But they do expect all of us to step up and help solve the problems they're creating. Toronto's shelter system, according to Olivia Chow, is already full, and 2/3 of shelter occupants are refugees and asylum seekers. Now that doesn't stop the federal government from opening up the floodgates and letting them in. I spoke to one of those asylum seekers living out on the street a few weeks ago, and he told me that he had a better life in Nigeria, the country he supposedly fled from. That had he known this was how bad Canada really is, he would have stayed home in Africa. Now, when's the last time you heard an asylum seeker from Africa say that? Before you came to Canada, did you know that this was going to be what was going to happen when you landed here?
No, this is not what I expected.
And what did you expect, if you don't mind me asking?
My expectation is like when I came to Canada, I came to work and live. And I was wishing that they can, provide a shelter and give me some paper so I can, to be like others.
So you think people need to be told the truth before they come to Canada, what they're really waiting for?
Yes,
yeah.
You have to let us know, because we can't live all the way from Africa.
Right.
We spend a lot of money to get a visa. Now we get down here, we start sleeping on the streets. It's not proper.
And last question, I appreciate your time. Last question. If you knew that this was going to be what was waiting for you here in Toronto, would you have come or would you not have come?
I would not have come because I got a family.
Yeah.
I got a family. I got a home. Please, the little we are doing to survive is enough. Right now, since I've been here, no money, only food and water. And that is not enough.
But if you happen to be one of the 500,000 immigrants a year coming to this country, sure, getting a job at a Tim Hortons won't seem to be an issue. Just go to your local Tims. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you want to better your life in this supposed land of opportunity here in Canada and want a job that requires more skill than pouring someone else's coffee and cooking up a farmer's wrap, you might find yourself waiting in one of these snaking lines outside of a grocery store for a job fair. Or maybe if you want to get a job as a security guard, how about you wait in this long snaking line for another security guard job fair where you'll have to compete with everyone else looking to get that job. Like I've said on this show many times now, the people in charge just don't have to face these issues. For Justin Trudeau, the answer actually appears to be that to solve these problems, you have to increase immigration levels. Try to wrap your head around this logic. Remember when he said this exact thing to a room full of tradespeople a few months ago?
There are a lot of pressures on our system. Increasing the immigration levels, interestingly, will take some of the pressure off of the system because the stream on bringing in permanent residents has got room to bring in more, and it's when people come as refugees and try to flip or get refugee crisis status that it sort of slows down the system a little bit. So increasing the levels will actually help bring in more people to respond to that.
And for conservatives in this country, either they are secretly in support of mass immigration, or more likely, they're too afraid to say what the majority of Canadians really think about the issue. Here's Ontario Premier Doug Ford yesterday while battling yet another scandal involving land developers, saying that Ontario is the fastest growing region in North America, growing faster than Texas and Florida, and that the province just can't keep up with housing demand given the number of people coming into this country. But notice that at no point in the following clip will you hear Doug Ford say, maybe we should just lower the number of people coming into this country to help Canadians first. That doesn't make the cut, but he will talk about how the province just can't keep up.
Ontario is experiencing unprecedented growth. Last year alone, Ontario grew by more than 500,000 people. Put that into perspective, the federal government brought in 1.1 million people into our country. 600,000 people landed everywhere else. But folks, guess what? Eventually, they're going to end up in Ontario. That's more newcomers than both Texas and Florida, the fastest growing states in America. We are now the fastest growing region, bar none, in North America. At current rates, Ontario will grow by more than 5 million people in the next 10 years.
Most shocking of all, really, is Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's stance on immigration. Again, despite the public clearly saying that 500,000 is too many people, Poilievre refuses to say whether or not he will lower the immigration target. As a rhetorical trick, Poilievre says that immigration should be tied to demand, not a set number.
As you know, Canada is on track to have about 500,000 new immigrants to the country by 2025. And I'm wondering if you think this is sustainable and if a Conservative government led by you would continue that trend and would be satisfied with that 500,000 a year number.
Justin Trudeau has broken our immigration system. We see this on the streets of Toronto, where refugees are living on the pavement. It wasn't like this 8 years ago. When refugees came to Canada, we had them sponsored by charities, churches, mosques, synagogues, other nonprofits to give them homes, help them write resumes, and get them fast work permits so that they could get jobs and paychecks. I want to get back to common sense immigration. The numbers should be driven by the number of employers who have job vacancies that they cannot fill with Canadians, by the number of charities that want to sponsor refugees, and by the families that can reunite and support their loved ones here, not by egotistical targets that are designed to give Justin Trudeau a vanity project. We need to get back to competent immigration. By the way, we need to expand housing construction. It's all well and good to think that you can increase the population by 1 million people in a year. But where are we going to house everybody?
How can you be a conservative and refuse to commit to fighting mass immigration? It really boggles the mind. For politicians on all sides of this issue, the answer just seems to be to build more homes. Or as Poilievre hilariously says, bring homes people can afford. And although that sounds like a great strategy, it's not working. We've lost 45,000 construction jobs in Canada, and the idea that we're going to build more homes with fewer construction workers is obviously outrageous. We shouldn't be trying to fast-track foreign worker credentials when Canadians who are fired for a medical decision that they made are still out of work. We shouldn't be bringing in more asylum seekers and refugees who will end up in our shelters when Canadian veterans are out on our streets, homeless. All right, ratio of the week time. The winner this week is Justin Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford. Last week, Telford shared an article by The Guardian which had to be community noted and fact-checked on Twitter because it's just not true. The out-of-context headline, Canada has 0 pro-choice Conservative MPs, Watchdog says. The fact check under Katie Telford's tweet says this: Bill C-311 is a 78-word bill that does not contain the word abortion. The bill is to protect a pregnant woman with aggravating circumstance for the purpose of sentencing. Now, this is in relation to a private member's bill by MP Kathy Wagenthal, which is designed to strengthen minimum sentencing for people who commit violent acts against pregnant women. Conservatives rightly voted in support of this bill, but of course the rest of the House of Commons voted against a bill that would protect pregnant women. And the reality is, that headline couldn't be further from the truth, because a majority of conservatives voted to allow sex-selective abortions in this country. How very conservative. Pierre voted for legislation allowing sex-selective abortions. How are they pro-life? Meanwhile, the Liberals think men can have babies. The bill is 1 page long and contains 0 references to abortion. Either you didn't read it, or you are deliberately trying to mislead people. We pay you well to work for us. Do better. Couldn't have put it better myself. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.